So it used to be when people invented stuff, they would put it under what was called tolerance tests. Basically, expose it to extremes of heat or cold. If it's a mechanical device, run excessive current through it, see how it holds up. Basically, a tolerance test, you're exposing it to negative conditions. And that's the important part to remember here. So tolerance comes from a Middle English word, um, Middle English, Old English, basically, which means to bear under hardship. That comes from a French word meaning pretty much the same thing, comes from a Latin word meaning, again, pretty much the same thing. So, um, that's what tolerance is. Tolerance, it's come into a lot of negativity these days. You know, Someone tried to promote it as a positive thing, and then the people promoting it as a positive thing turned out to be very negative people themselves. And so it gets a lot of criticism, which it deserves, because tolerance is actually a hateful word. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Like I said, it's bearing up under hardship, so it implies that whatever is being tolerated is negative. The Latin, back when they did use it back in the Roman days or whenever, it was actually seen as a negative thing. Somewhere along the way, we flipped it and decided it was positive, but it was originally negative, and its use was still, the progression of its use continued to be negative. So early 1600s in France, where again the English eventually got the word from, it was basically dealt with um, allowances under the law. We have certain things which we find illegal because they're wrong, but we will tolerate them eventually because you know people are going to do them anyway, or whatever reason. But it's the law is not going to chase this stuff out. It's like jaywalking almost. It's illegal. If a cop has nothing better to do and catches you jaywalking, he might write you a fine for it. Most police are going to ignore jaywalkers unless they're doing it like in the middle of busy streets. About the middle of the 17th century, English started using it. They had the Acts of Toleration, which was basically, it became a religious thing. Have the official Church of England, but we have a bunch of other Protestant denominations which want to do their stuff. They disagree with us. And, yeah, they aren't worshiping Christ the way we would worship Christ, but they aren't causing any trouble either, so we will tolerate them. We will allow them to exist, even though they aren't the official religion of these, nation. We will tolerate their existence. So, again, we go through. This is sort of eventually it's turning into a social construct instead of just a regular, bearing up under hardship. So we're starting to apply it socially. So we come to modern times, and someone comes along with, yes, we need to be more tolerant. Sounds good on the surface, but again, tolerance implies negativity. You know, think of how we used to say it before it became a buzzword. How long will you tolerate this? I will tolerate this no longer. The word implies there's a breaking point. And so it's, we will accept you for now. Tomorrow we might not. That's tolerance. And that is the way, the modern day tolerant movement uses it. The people who are screaming for tolerance are the same ones who will demand vengeance on someone who upsets them on social media. I mean, that's like I said, that's what I originally talked about, how it's looked at as a hateful thing by some people now, and it is, because that's the way it's being used. Now, just to prove my point, or to further explain my point, let's look at this in the generic sense and in the specific sense. In the generic sense, tolerance sounds great. I'm a tolerant person. Sounds great. Who wouldn't want to be a tolerant person? Who wouldn't want to be known as being tolerant? Okay. What do you think of this group of people? Oh, I tolerate them. Doesn't sound so positive anymore, does it? It actually sounds very judgmental, very almost like, yes, there is a breaking point. I tolerate them now. Tomorrow, when they do something I don't like, I will be less tolerant of them, because that's what tolerance implies. So, it's very easy to claim to be a tolerant person, and it sounds great until you start to get into specifics like that. And it's this ethnic group, I tolerate them. This racial group, I tolerate them. I'm tolerant of these people. It just suddenly implies that it's no one says that. No one says things as specific because it does sound so negative, because it is actually a negative word. Tolerance is not really the same as acceptance. Tolerance is saying, I view this person as negative, but I will put up with them for now. And it's that for now part which really makes it wrong. There's always a breaking point. Social media has proven that the people who claim to be tolerant have stepped across this breaking point several times. Where did it come from? So, tried to find this out online. It made reference to a group in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who was responding to someone who committed a hate crime. So I think if that's where the tolerance movement started, I think their intentions were good. Is that how it spread? Because that dealt with, that Wikipedia mentioned the Tolerance, Acceptance, and Equity Act or something like that. And it was a very specific thing. But that's not the sort of thing that would typically spread as rapidly as it did. Yeah, I'm thinking if it started in academia, then it's very negative, as things that start in academia sometimes are, because these are people who should know what they're talking about. They should be doing research. They should, you don't just pull out a word and put it in your thesis paper. You look up and try to find the right word. So either, like I said, if it started in academia, either they didn't do their research like they were supposed to, or they knew very well that this is a word that can be flipped whenever you want to. And I would strongly, I believe, like I said, if this started with some group of academics who were trying to make a name for themselves, I believe that they did this on purpose, knowing that, yes, down the road we're going to be able to break our tolerance of people and start being hateful to them on social media. That's sort of the conspiracy theory view of it. The other view is these people didn't do their research like they should have, in which case, unfortunately we're living in a days where not, academics don't always do the research they should be doing, but that would be a topic for another video altogether, which I'm not going to even try to get into. That would be a very long research, a very long video too, so I'm going to skip over that one, and we're just going to say, tolerance, be careful about the words you're using. Tolerance itself is not a good word. A lot of people, they intend it to be good, they don't really know what it means, and so they make mistakes and they misuse words, as they often do. So that's all. Have a good day.